What if the most ordinary objects from thousands of years ago could whisper their secrets to us? Picture a simple stone tool, not much larger than your palm, its edges worn smooth by hands that shaped it millennia ago. This isn't just a rock, it's a time capsule, a silent storyteller holding the echoes of lives long vanished. Every scratch, every chip, every groove is a clue to how our ancestors lived, loved, and survived. Across centuries and continents, these everyday artifacts, tools, pottery, even fragments of clothing carry the weight of human history, waiting for us to listen. Think about the last thing you held in your hands, maybe a phone, a coffee cup, a key. Now imagine that same object unearthed 2,000 years from now. What would it say about you? The truth is, the most mundane items often reveal the most profound truths. Ancient tools weren't just functional, they were extensions of the people who made them. A flint knife tells us about hunger and resourcefulness. A child's clay toy speaks of play and family. A broken pot might hint at trade routes stretching farther than we ever imagined. These objects are bridges, connecting us to minds and hearts separated by time but united by the same fundamental needs: to create, to connect, to endure. This journey isn't just about archaeology, it's about rediscovering ourselves. When we study these artifacts, we're piecing together the hidden chapters of humanity's story. How did a simple wheel evolve into a symbol of progress? What can a handful of seeds found in an ancient hearth teach us about community and survival? Together, we'll uncover how the smallest details, a fingerprint left in clay, the way a blade was sharpened, paint a vivid portrait of civilizations that shaped our world. By the time we're done, you'll never look at an ordinary object the same way again, because hidden in plain sight are the untold stories of us. Grand monuments may awe us with their scale, but it's the humble, everyday objects that truly let us step into the past. Think about it, a pharaoh's gold mask tells us about power and ceremony, but a worn-out sandal tells us about the person who walked miles in it. These ordinary artifacts are like snapshots of daily life frozen in time. Take something as simple as a clay pot. The way it's shaped, the fingerprints still pressed into its surface, even the soot stains from countless meals cooked over a fire. Each detail is a breadcrumb leading us back to the people who used it. Consider the grinding stones found in ancient settlements. These weren't just tools, they were the centerpieces of survival. The way they're worn down tells us what grains were eaten, how often meals were prepared, even how labor was divided in a household. A deeply grooved stone might mean it was used for generations, passed from mother to daughter, a silent witness to countless family stories. And then there are the smaller things: a bone needle, a child's toy, a charred piece of bread. These aren't just relics, they're intimate connections to people who laughed, worried, and dreamed just like we do. Tools, in particular, are like time machines. A flint arrowhead isn't just a hunting implement, its craftsmanship reveals trade networks, the skill level of its maker, even the types of animals hunted. A bronze chisel tells us when metalworking transformed societies, allowing for everything from shipbuilding to intricate carvings. The wear patterns on a tool's edge can show whether it was used for cutting wood or butchering meat, giving us glimpses into the rhythms of daily labor. These objects don't just show us how people survived, they show us how they innovated, adapted, and thrived. What's remarkable is how universal these stories are. A cooking pot from ancient Mesopotamia and one from the Indus Valley might look different, but they both whisper the same human truths: the need to feed a family, the comfort of a shared meal, the ingenuity of turning raw ingredients into something nourishing. That's the real magic of these artifacts. They remind us that while empires rise and fall, the essence of being human hasn't changed all that much. The next time you hold something ordinary, a spoon, a button, a pencil, think about what it might say about you centuries from now. Because history isn't just written in grand events, it's etched into the things we use every day. Stone tools weren't just crude instruments, they were humanity's first masterpieces, shaped by hands that understood the potential locked inside ordinary rock. Picture holding a hand axe crafted over 1,000,000 years ago. Its symmetrical edges, carefully chipped away on both sides, reveal something extraordinary. The moment our ancestors stopped seeing stones as random objects and started seeing them as raw material waiting to be transformed. That cognitive leap changed everything. Archaeologists can read these tools like books. The microscopic scratches on a scraper tell us if it processed animal hides or plant fibers, while the way a blade was flaked shows whether its maker was right or left-handed. What's truly astonishing is how far these stones traveled. Some obsidian tools found at ancient sites originated from quarries hundreds of miles away, proving that early humans weren't just surviving. They were networking, trading, and sharing knowledge across vast distances long before written language existed. A single hand axe might represent generations of accumulated wisdom, its design refined slightly with each new maker. And when we find groups of these tools clustered together, they often show specialized uses, some for heavy butchering, others for delicate carving, hinting at the earliest divisions of labor in human societies. Then came the quiet revolution of polishing, where early tools had rough, fractured edges. Later stone blades were ground smooth against abrasive rocks, creating sharper, more durable edges. This wasn't just about practicality, it reflected a cultural shift. Polished axes became symbols of status, sometimes buried with their owners or traded as prestige items. In Japan, jadeite axes from the Jomon period were so beautifully crafted, they were likely used in ceremonies rather than daily work. The stone itself became a canvas, with some tools displaying deliberate color choices or decorative flaking patterns that served no functional purpose. These innovations didn't happen in isolation. The same hand that shaped a stone tool later learned to mold clay, leading us to the next great leap, pottery. Just as early tools reveal cognitive breakthroughs, the first clay vessels tell a story of settled communities discovering new ways to store, cook, and share food. But that transformation, from stone to clay, wouldn't have been possible without the millions of years of experimentation locked within those simple rocks. Every smooth edge, every carefully placed strike was a stepping stone toward civilization itself. Clay vessels didn't just hold food, they held revolutions. When early humans first pressed their fingers into wet clay and shaped it into something that could withstand fire, they weren't just making containers. They were inventing a new way of living. Picture this, a nomadic hunter-gatherer group suddenly able to store grain through winter, to carry water across long distances, to boil tough roots into soft, digestible meals. Pottery didn't just change diets, it changed human biology, allowing for softer foods that altered our jaw structures over generations. The oldest known pottery, found in China's Xianrendong cave, dates back nearly 20,000 years. These weren't crude lumps of clay, they were carefully coiled and fired, showing an understanding of materials that predated agriculture itself. What's fascinating is how differently pottery emerged across cultures. In Japan's Jomon period, potters created elaborate rope-patterned vessels for storing shellfish. Along the Nile, potters mixed straw into clay to prevent cracking under the hot sun. Each adaptation tells us about the environment, the available resources, even the foods people prioritized. those fingerprints pressed into ancient pots. They're more than accidental marks, they're signatures. Archaeologists have matched prints on Mesopotamian pottery to specific individuals, revealing workshops where multiple generations worked side by side. In some cases, children's tiny fingerprints appear alongside adults, showing how skills were passed down. The decorations tell even richer stories. A zigzag pattern on a pot from ancient Turkey might represent flowing water, while spiral motifs on Greek vases could symbolize the cycle of life. These weren't just pretty designs, they were a language before writing existed. Then there's what's inside the pots. Modern science can detect traces of ancient meals, olive oil in Canaanite jars, chocolate residue in Mayan vessels, even traces of hallucinogenic plants in ceremonial cups from Peru. One Bronze Age pot from Denmark contained the remains of a honey-based fermented drink, complete with crushed berries, proof that humans were brewing alcoholic beverages at least 3,000 years ago. The way pots were used also reveals social structures. In ancient Mesopotamia, plain cooking pots were found in every home, while intricately painted vessels appeared only in temples and palaces, a clear marker of class divisions. Perhaps most remarkably, pottery shows how interconnected ancient worlds were. The distinctive orange clay of Roman amphorae appears across 3 continents, tracing trade routes for olive oil and wine. In Africa, the Nok culture's terracotta sculptures show stylistic influences from cultures hundreds of miles away. Every broken shard is a piece of a global puzzle we're still assembling. As these clay vessels grew more sophisticated, so did the societies that made them. The potter's wheel, invented around 3500 BC, didn't just speed up production. It required specialized craftsmen creating new social roles. Glazes developed independently in Egypt, China, and Mesopotamia transformed functional objects into works of art. What began as simple storage became currency, status symbol, even religious artifact. The humble pot had become civilization's mirror, reflecting everything from daily meals to cosmic beliefs. Now consider this: the same hands that shaped those ancient pots would later weave fabrics from plant fibers and animal hairs. Just as pottery preserved food, textiles would come to preserve body heat, express identity, and even carry coded messages. But that's a thread we'll unravel next. Fabric is fragile, yet when threads do survive the centuries, they weave a story more vivid than stone or clay ever could. A single scrap of linen from ancient Egypt, still miraculously intact after 5,000 years, carries the secrets of hands that soaked, spun, and stitched it. These weren't just craftspeople, they were chemists experimenting with dyes made from crushed insects, rust, or rare sea snails to create colors so precious they became status symbols. In South America, the Paracas culture wrapped their dead in embroidered mantles so intricate that each stitch mapped constellations and mythical creatures, a language of thread passed down through generations. Even the humblest textile tells a tale. That sandal found in a Missouri cave, woven from fibrous plants over 9,000 years ago. Its twisted cords show someone solved the problem of protecting feet long before leatherworking. A Bronze Age basket discovered in the Middle East, still flexible enough to bend, reveals weaving techniques so advanced they're used by artisans today. And those bone needles from Siberia, some as old as 50,000 years, prove our ancestors were sewing animal hides into clothing during the Ice Age, long before they settled into farming villages. What's astonishing is how textiles connected distant worlds. When archaeologists unearth Chinese silk in an Egyptian tomb or Indian cotton in a Roman marketplace, they're tracing routes not just of trade but of ideas. The vibrant purple stripes on a Phoenician tunic required harvesting thousands of mollusks, a luxury so costly it became synonymous with royalty. Meanwhile, in the Andes, farmers bred alpacas for wool so fine it rivaled silk, while Norse women used simple drop spindles to turn sheep's fleece into sails that powered Viking ships. Cloth was more than material, it was money, identity, even legal tender. In ancient Mesopotamia, receipts for temple workers' payments were recorded in measures of wool. The Aztecs accepted woven cotton cloaks as taxes, while medieval European guilds guarded weaving secrets as tightly as state secrets. A single bolt of fabric could buy grain, land, even freedom for enslaved individuals in some African kingdoms. But none of this would have been possible without the quiet revolution happening in fields and pastures. As populations grew, so did the demand for raw materials: flax for linen, sheep for wool, silkworms for thread. The same hands that plowed soil also sheared sheep, planted cotton, and harvested reeds for baskets. Farming tools weren't just feeding mouths, they were fueling entire industries. From the first wooden plows breaking tough soil to iron sickles efficiently harvesting grain, agricultural innovations allowed societies to shift from mere survival to specialization. Villages could now support weavers, dyers, and tailors, artisans who turned the raw gifts of the earth into the fabric of civilization itself. The plow didn't just break ground, it broke humanity free from the endless hunt for food. Picture the first farmer leaning into a wooden plow pulled by oxen, turning soil that had never been cultivated before. That single act changed everything. Suddenly, 1 acre of land could feed 10 times as many people as it could through foraging. But the real magic lies in what archaeologists find when they examine these ancient farming tools. A Bronze Age hoe discovered in Mesopotamia shows distinct wear patterns not from one type of soil, but alternating between wet and dry conditions. This tiny detail reveals something astonishing. Our ancestors were practicing crop rotation over 4,000 years ago, letting fields recover fertility naturally. Storage tells an even richer story. Those circular pits lined with clay found near ancient villages, they weren't just holes in the ground, they were prehistoric silos, proof that farmers were producing more grain than their families needed. Surplus food meant people could stop worrying about their next meal and start specializing. A village with full granaries could support toolmakers, potters, even scribes, the birth of complex society. In Egypt, tomb paintings show scribes recording grain shipments with reed pens, their inventories carefully tracking the harvests that fed thousands. The tool that filled the granary made the pen possible, but farming tools also mirrored social divides. An iron plowshare found in a chieftain's grave in Scandinavia wasn't just a practical object, it was a symbol. Owning draft animals and metal plows meant controlling the means of production, a form of power as real as any crown. Meanwhile, rice farming communities in ancient China developed entirely different tools: wooden paddles for smoothing flooded fields, sickle blades curved perfectly for harvesting delicate rice stalks. Compare that to the heavy flint sickles used in the Middle East for cutting tough wheat stems, and you're seeing geography shape technology in real time. Perhaps most remarkably, these agricultural innovations traveled. The Qanat irrigation systems of Persia, underground tunnels that brought water from mountains to deserts, appeared centuries later in Roman North Africa. Terraced farming techniques from the Andes showed up in Southeast Asia. Everywhere humans went, they took their tools and adapted them, creating a global exchange of ideas long before the modern era. The humble plowshare didn't just till soil, it cultivated connections between distant cultures. Now consider this: the same hands that guided plows would soon grasp styluses to press marks into clay. Because once farming created surplus, and surplus created cities, those cities needed a way to keep track of it all. The story of writing begins not with poetry or history, but with accounting, with the practical need to record how much grain was stored in which silo. And the tools that made writing possible hold secrets just as revealing as any plow or sickle. The first writing tools weren't just instruments, they were revolutionaries in clay and ink. Imagine a Mesopotamian merchant pressing the corner of a reed stylus into wet clay, leaving wedge-shaped marks that would harden into permanent records. Those cuneiform tablets didn't simply track sheep and grain. They captured the birth of law, literature, and even complaints. One famous tablet from ancient Ur contains a customer's angry letter about receiving poor quality copper, proving some human experiences truly are timeless. The very act of writing transformed memory from something fleeting to something that could outlive empires. Egyptian scribes took this further with their reed pens and ink made from soot and gum. The Rosetta Stone wasn't carved with chisels, it was brushed into existence, its hieroglyphs flowing like the Nile itself. What's remarkable is how portable these tools became. Archaeologists have found scribble kits buried with officials, complete with pigment cakes and mixing dishes. Some even had miniature water pots for moistening ink, the ancient equivalent of a traveler's fountain pen. When Rome's legions marched, they carried wax tablets that could be erased and reused, their styluses leaving temporary notes that still survive in rare cases where fires melted and preserved the wax. The materials told their own stories. A medieval monk's quill wasn't just a writing tool, its feather type revealed his monastery's connections. Swan quills were prized for fine liturgical work, while raven feathers made bold strokes for legal documents. In China, the hair of a newborn tiger cub was allegedly used for special brushes, though most scholars settled for rabbit or goat. These weren't arbitrary choices. The right brush could mean the difference between a clumsy character and one worthy of an emperor's edict. Perhaps most touching are the traces of learners. A schoolboy's practice tablet from ancient Babylon shows his teacher's elegant cuneiform on one side, his own shaky attempts on the other. Roman children scratched letters into wax with bone style, sometimes doodling ships or gladiators in the margins. These humble exercises connect us across millennia to universal experiences, the struggle to learn, the pride of mastery, even the boredom of homework. But if writing tools captured thoughts, personal adornments revealed souls. When we examine a Viking woman's brooch or a pharaoh's pectoral, we're not just seeing decoration, we're glimpsing how people saw themselves and wanted to be seen. A simple bone hairpin from Pompeii might represent a slave's sole luxury, while a Han Dynasty jade pendant carried beliefs about immortality. Jewelry was rarely just ornamental. It was armor, identity, and sometimes even currency, with beads trading across continents long before coins existed. The real magic happens when these two worlds collide. An Egyptian scribe's ring might bear his name in hieroglyphs, merging the art of writing with personal adornment. Celtic talks twisted gold into language without words, their intricate patterns declaring lineage and status. Whether etched in metal or woven into fabric, these silent statements whisper the same truth, that every civilization, no matter how ancient, found ways to say, "This is who I am." Jewelry was humanity's first language, one that spoke in shells, stones, and precious metals long before words could capture the same depth of meaning. Take that strand of polished seashells found in a cave in Morocco, carefully drilled and strung by hands that lived 100,000 years ago. This wasn't just decoration, it was a declaration. Whoever wore those beads was saying something profound. I belong to a group, or I traveled to the sea, or perhaps I understand beauty in ways others don't. Fast forward to ancient Mesopotamia, where lapis lazuli from Afghanistan adorned royal tombs in Egypt. The vibrant blue stone didn't just signify wealth, It mapped entire trade routes stretching across mountains and deserts, connecting cultures that might never meet face to face. What's fascinating is how jewelry served purposes far beyond vanity. A Viking woman's brooch wasn't merely ornamental, its intricate design and weighty silver content proclaimed her family's status, while its practical clasp held her tunic together against northern winds. Roman signet rings doubled as security devices, their engraved gemstones pressed into wax to seal documents with a mark more personal than any signature. Even the humblest artifacts carry these layered meanings. A child's grave from Bronze Age Britain held a tiny bracelet of woven grass too fragile to last a lifetime, yet deliberately placed as if to say, this little life mattered. The materials themselves whisper secrets about forgotten worlds. When archaeologists find carnelian beads from India in Mesopotamian ruins, or Baltic amber in Mycenaean tombs, they're piecing together networks of exchange that flourished millennia before globalization. Goldwork techniques traveled just as far. The same granulation method appeared simultaneously in Etruscan Italy and pre-Columbian Peru, raising tantalizing questions about parallel innovation or lost connections. Some adornments blurred the line between fashion and function. Chinese jade pendants were believed to protect the soul, while Egyptian amulets shaped like scarabs or ankhs served as portable prayers in solid form. But perhaps most revealing is what people chose to take with them into eternity. A Celtic chieftain buried with his torque wasn't just being sentimental. That twisted gold collar marked his rank in this life and the next. The meticulous way certain beads were arranged around a corpse's wrists or ankles sometimes mirrors living traditions still practiced by their descendants today. These choices weren't arbitrary. They were messages cast forward through time, waiting for us to decipher their codes. Now consider a different kind of artifact, one that reveals not how ancient people adorned their bodies, but how they entertained their minds. Because when we examine the dice, game pieces, and toys left behind, we're seeing humanity at play. A wooden doll from Roman Egypt or a set of ivory gaming counters from doesn't just represent leisure. It shows us people who laughed, strategized, and taught their children through objects not so different from our own. The universal urge to play connects us across centuries in ways that even the finest jewelry cannot. A 4,000-year-old wooden ball discovered in an Egyptian child's tomb still bears the faint marks of tiny fingers, proof that the urge to play is as old as civilization itself. Across continents and centuries, ancient toys whisper the same truth. Childhood has always been about imagination, that Babylonian board game carved into a stone tablet. It wasn't just entertainment, it was mathematics in disguise, teaching probability and strategy through sheep and wheat tokens. Even the humblest playthings carried layers of meaning. A doll with articulated limbs found in a Roman grave wasn't merely a toy. Its finely carved facial features and realistic hair suggested it might have been a funeral offering, a companion for the afterlife. Gaming pieces tell equally rich stories. Those animal bone dice from Indus Valley sites, their uneven wear patterns reveal which numbers were favored in wagers. A Viking etched set, a strategic board game often called Viking chess, shows how play mirrored warfare, with attackers and defenders maneuvering carved stone pieces. In Mesoamerica, rubber balls from ritual games held spiritual significance, their bouncing motion symbolizing the sun's journey across the sky. The Olmecs even built ceremonial ball courts where games blended sport, politics, and sacred drama, sometimes ending with human sacrifices. But toys weren't just for children. A collection of miniature bronze weapons found in a Mycenaean warrior's tomb might have been gifts for a young prince learning his future role. Similarly, Inuit children practiced seal hunting with tiny harpoons, while Scythian nomads gave their sons scaled-down bows. These objects blur the line between play and preparation, showing how societies passed down essential skills through objects designed to delight. Perhaps most touching are the accidental discoveries, a group of pebbles arranged as makeshift checkers near an ancient Greek harbor, or a crude wooden top whittled by a child in prehistoric Britain. Unlike temple treasures or royal jewels, these simple artifacts carry no pretensions. They're echoes of universal moments: a bored soldier passing time, a parent amusing a fussy toddler, friends gathered around a game by firelight. Now consider this: the same hands that carved game pieces or stitched dolls would also have tended wounds and fevers, because just as play reveals our humanity, so do the tools we've created to preserve it. From flint scalpels to herbal remedies, the history of medicine is written in objects that tell of both suffering and ingenuity, a story waiting in the next layer of soil. The oldest surgical tool ever discovered isn't made of gleaming steel. It's a flint scalpel from ancient Egypt, its edge still sharp enough to split skin after 5,000 years. What's astonishing isn't just its precision, but what we found nearby: linen bandages stained with honey and resin, a Bronze Age antiseptic dressing that modern science confirms fought infection. This pairing, the blade and the bomb, captures the dual nature of ancient medicine, equal parts technical skill and intuitive wisdom. Archaeologists have uncovered Roman bone levers for setting fractures so finely crafted they're nearly identical to modern orthopedic tools, while delicate bronze forceps from Pompeii reveal how surgeons removed arrowheads with meticulous care. Then there are the more unsettling finds, like the trephination drills used across 3 continents to bore holes in living skulls. Some patients survived, evidenced by healed bone around the openings. Were these early surgeons relieving pressure from head injuries or performing spiritual rituals? The answer might be both. A Peruvian skull shows multiple successful trepanations, suggesting the patient kept returning for what they believed was therapeutic. Equally remarkable are the prosthetics: a 3,000-year-old wooden toe from Egypt, carefully hinged for mobility, or the iron hand crafted for a 6th century warrior, its fingers still able to grip a shield. The real revelations come from residue analysis. Crushed herbs in Mycenaean mortars match descriptions in later Greek medical texts, proving oral traditions preserved knowledge for centuries. A charred Assyrian tablet lists over 200 medicinal plants, while a buried Celtic healer's kit contained pouches of mint, yarrow, and poppy, ingredients still used today for digestion, wound care, and pain relief. Some remedies sound fantastical, like the Roman cure for indigestion involving powdered mouse brains, while others, like using moldy bread on wounds, hinted at antibiotics millennia before penicillin. What unites these objects is their testimony to universal human experiences. That Bronze Age woman buried with her arthritis-worn bones alongside a pouch of willow bark, nature's aspirin, tells us suffering and compassion transcend time. The surgical tools found in military camps speak of battlefield ingenuity, while delicate obstetric hooks from Pompeii remind us that childbirth dangers haunted every era. These weren't primitive attempts at medicine, they were sophisticated solutions born of observation, trial, and often startling insight. Now consider the tools that shaped not bodies, but civilizations. Because just as medical instruments reveal how we cared for individuals, construction tools show how we built societies, from the copper chisels that raised the pyramids to the pulleys that lifted Rome's aqueducts. The transition from healing hands to building hands marks humanity's next great leap. The chisel marks on a pyramid stone block tell a story no history book can capture. Each strike represents a worker's breath in the desert heat, a precise calculation of angles, and generations of knowledge passed from mason to apprentice. These weren't just construction tools, they were timekeeping devices. Archaeologists studying where patterns on bronze chisels from Giza found that blades were resharpened at regular intervals, revealing shifts as regimented as any modern workday. Even failures speak volumes. That massive unfinished obelisk still lying in an Egyptian quarry. Its cracked base shows where ancient engineers pushed granite's limits, teaching us more about their understanding of material stress than any perfectly standing monument could. Roman concrete holds even deeper mysteries. While modern concrete crumbles in seawater, the piers of Caesarea's harbor have survived 2,000 years of Mediterranean waves. The secret lies in volcanic ash from Pozzuoli, mixed with lime and seawater to create a self-healing material. Microscopic cracks fill with new crystals as they form. Recent studies even suggest the Romans may have added animal blood for extra strength, the proteins creating microscopic air pockets. This wasn't accidental chemistry. It was material science so advanced we're only now decoding its formulas. Simple tools often hid sophisticated physics. A wooden frame level from Pompeii, its plumb line still intact, demonstrates precision engineering with nothing but gravity and string. Rope fragments found near Stonehenge show how Neolithic builders twisted plant fibers into cables strong enough to move 20-ton megaliths. Even the grooves worn into ramp stones near the Great Pyramid tell us how teams lubricated sled paths with water to reduce friction, an early application of physics principles that wouldn't be formally described for millennia. The cultural impact ran deeper than architecture. When the Romans introduced the pulley to their construction sites, they didn't just lift heavier stones, they reshaped social hierarchies. Suddenly, a single operator could move loads that previously required dozens of slaves, altering labor dynamics across the empire. In China, standardized measuring tools from the Qin dynasty unified construction practices, physically manifesting the emperor's vision of centralized control. These tools didn't just build structures, they built ideologies in wood and stone. Now listen closely, because those same hands that shaped granite and mixed mortar also plucked strings and beat drums. Musical instruments unearthed from ancient sites don't just play notes, they resonate with the laughter, grief, and dreams of people long gone. A bone flute from 40,000 years ago still carries the fingerprints of its maker, while the silver trumpets found in Tutankhamun's tomb were tuned to intervals we'd recognize today. The universal language of music awaits its turn to speak. That bone flute discovered in a German cave carved from the wing of a griffon vulture over 40,000 years ago doesn't just play notes. It plays time itself. When a modern musician recreates its haunting tones, we're not just hearing an ancient scale, we're hearing the same vibrations that once echoed through Ice Age caverns, perhaps accompanying rituals or storytelling beneath flickering torchlight. This wasn't an isolated invention. From China's 9,000-year-old Gudi bone flutes to the reconstructed lyres of with their golden bull heads, every culture transformed local materials into something transcendent. A tortoise-shell resonator from Crete became a lyre. A hollowed-out log in the Amazon became a drum. Mammoth ivory in Siberia turned into a whistle that still carries its piercing cry across centuries. But why did music emerge everywhere? One clue lies in the Aztec death whistle, a ceramic skull-shaped instrument that produced screams so unnerving they were likely used in battle or sacrificial rites. For the Maya, conch shell trumpets called to the gods during solstice ceremonies, their deep blasts timed with celestial events. Contrast that with the delicate panpipes found in Moch tombs, their reeds tuned to melodies we'll never fully decipher. These weren't just noisemakers, they were tools of communion between people, between worlds. The real magic happens when reconstructions let us bridge that gap. When scholars restrung a Sumerian silver lyre using gut strings and played the world's oldest notated melody, a hymn to the moon goddess written 3,400 years ago, the trembling notes carried whispers of temple courtyards and midnight offerings. A reconstructed Roman hydraulis, an early water-powered organ, reveals how its pressurized air channels anticipated modern instruments. Even without written music, analyzing where patterns on bone flutes tells us which notes were favored, hinting at lost musical traditions. Yet some sounds were never meant for human ears. Inuit throat singers imitated animal spirits through otherworldly duets, while Tibetan monks used long horns to mimic the roar of mythical creatures. The Aboriginal didgeridoos' droning vibrations mapped creation stories onto the air itself. These instruments didn't just entertain, they encoded knowledge from navigation techniques to ancestral warnings about drought cycles. Now picture this, as melodies traveled overland, another set of tools was connecting continents across water. Maritime technology didn't just move goods, it carried musical instruments, weaving sonic tapestries between cultures. A Phoenician shipwreck's cargo might reveal bronze symbols from Cyprus beside Egyptian ivory clappers, proving that trade routes were also sound highways. The same currents that guided sailors would soon carry songs across oceans, blending rhythms in ways no one could have anticipated. Fishhooks tell stories that sink deeper than the ocean itself. Those delicate shell hooks found in Timor-Leste, carved over 40,000 years ago, weren't just tools, they were survival strategies perfected over generations. Each curve was calculated, tested against the strength of specific fish, the angle designed to hook securely without snapping fragile material. But the real revelation comes when we find these hooks far inland, traded upriver to communities who'd never seen the sea. Suddenly, a simple fishing tool becomes proof of networks stretching from coast to mountain. Viking sunstones take this ingenuity further. These translucent calcite crystals, mentioned in Norse sagas, polarized sunlight to reveal the sun's position even through dense fog, a navigational trick modern science only confirmed in 2011. A shipwreck off Alderney yielded a crystal perfectly aligned with Viking navigation routes, its scratches suggesting constant use. Combine this with their iconic sun compasses, wooden discs that tracked shadows cast by a central gnomon, and you've got a maritime GPS system powered by pure observation. Then there are the Phoenicians, whose stone anchors revolutionized seafaring. Unlike earlier weighted baskets, these perforated stones could be hoisted aboard, letting ships ride out storms instead of being stranded. The wear patterns on their hulls reveal how often they were deployed, while their distribution maps ancient harbors now buried under silt. Even net sinkers, those overlooked clay or stone weights, hold surprises. Clusters found in the Black Sea suggest industrial-scale fishing, with some Bronze Age sites yielding enough weights to stretch nets hundreds of meters wide. Boat-building tools like the adze connect these stories. The distinctive marks left by this axe-like tool on ship timbers act as fingerprints. Norwegian adzes shaped oak differently than Greek ones, letting archaeologists trace vessels back to their home ports. A reconstructed Polynesian outrigger canoe, built using traditional stone tools, recently sailed 11,000 nautical miles using only stars and swell patterns for guidance, proving ancient navigation wasn't crude, it was brilliantly adapted to its environment. Crude as they seem, early maps were packed with practical wisdom. Marshall Islands stick charts woven from palm fibers didn't show coastlines, they mapped ocean swells and currents, vital knowledge for atoll hopping voyages. A Roman portolan chart etched on silver might look decorative until you realize its wavy lines mark safe channels through treacherous shallows. These weren't just guides, they were distilled experience passed between generations, sometimes at terrible cost. But the sea wasn't always a connector, it could also be a battleground. When we examine the shift from fishing spears to naval rams, or from trade vessels to warships, we're witnessing how tools of sustenance became tools of conquest. That bronze battering ram recovered from the Mediterranean wasn't just a weapon, it represented the moment naval power shifted from who could carry the most goods to who could sink the most ships. The same hands that tied fishing nets would later weave the ropes controlling siege engines, proving that innovation born from necessity could be turned toward destruction just as easily as survival. The first spear wasn't just a weapon, it was a revolution in human hands. Imagine that moment when an early hunter lashed a razor-sharp obsidian point to a wooden shaft, extending their reach beyond what flesh and bone could accomplish. This simple innovation didn't just change hunting, it reshaped the balance between survival and dominance. Archaeologists find these lethal masterpieces everywhere from African savannas to Arctic tundra, each culture adapting the design to their needs. The Clovis points of North America, fluted for easier hafting, show how even Stone Age weapons evolved through generations of trial and error. But here's what's startling: many of these deadly tools were also works of art. Some Mayan obsidian blades were so thin they became translucent, their edges still sharp enough to split hairs after 1,000 years. Then came metal, turning warfare into both science and spectacle. The pattern-welded swords of the Vikings weren't just functional. Their swirling layers of iron and steel represented status, skill, and supernatural beliefs. When archaeologists found the Ulfbert swords scattered across Europe, their superior carbon content suggested manufacturing secrets lost for centuries. These weren't mass-produced tools, each bore the smith's name like an artist's signature. The Roman gladius tells another story entirely. Its short, brutal design perfect for disciplined formations where thousands moved as one. The differences between these weapons map entire philosophies of war, individual heroism versus collective might. Sometimes the most revealing finds aren't weapons at all, but their aftermath. An arrowhead lodged in a vertebrae from the Battle of Toten paints a more vivid picture than any history book. The angle of entry shows the victim was likely kneeling when struck from above, a haunting detail from England's bloodiest medieval conflict. Yet for every weapon made for battle, another was crafted solely for show. The jade axes of Neolithic China, too fragile for combat, or the gold-inlaid daggers of Mycenaean kings, these objects spoke a language of power that needed no bloodshed to be understood. Perhaps most telling are the moments when weapons transformed into something else entirely. Hordes of Bronze Age swords found deliberately bent and buried suggest ritual sacrifices of implements of war. Biblical references to beating swords into plowshares weren't just metaphor. Archaeologists have found Roman spear points reforged as farming tools after periods of peace. These objects carried the potential for both destruction and renewal, their purpose reshaped by human choice. Now consider this: the same hands that forged swords would soon shape devices to measure something far more elusive, time itself. Because as societies grew more complex, they needed tools not just to conquer space, but to organize the very minutes and hours of human lives. From shadow clocks to water-powered mechanisms, the next revolution wasn't in metal, but in moments. Long before clocks ticked in every home, ancient civilizations wrestled the sun, moon, and stars into submission with ingenious timekeeping tools. Take that wedge-shaped Babylonian tablet etched with zodiac symbols. It wasn't just early astronomy. It was a farmer's almanac, a priest's ritual guide, and a king's political calendar, all pressed into clay. The Maya built entire temples as celestial calendars, their staircases counting the days until Venus reappeared, while Egyptian obelisks cast shadows that divided daylight into predictable segments. But here's what's astonishing: these weren't abstract calculations. A sundial's markings dictated when to plant wheat. A water clock's drip measured a lawyer's speaking time in Athenian courts. Time wasn't just observed, it was harnessed, weaponized even. Portable sundials shatter our assumptions about ancient rhythms, that palm-sized bronze disc found in Pompeii. Its adjustable gnomon could tell time across Roman provinces, proving merchants and soldiers chased deadlines long before smartphones. The Antikythera mechanism, with its gearwork predicting eclipses, reveals an obsession with precision that rivals modern engineering. But simplicity often spoke loudest. In China, incense sticks burned at exact rates to mark meditation sessions, while in medieval Europe, candle clocks flickered through nighttime prayers. Each culture sliced time differently. Inca knotted cords tracked lunar cycles, while Arabian astrolabes aligned prayer times with planetary movements. The real power of these devices lay in their ability to synchronize societies. When the Nile flooded, Egyptian priests didn't just note the event, they recalibrated their calendar stones, tying the chaos of nature to human order. The Aztec sunstone wasn't merely art. Its intricate carvings scheduled sacrifices, markets, and tax collections with terrifying exactness. Even domestic objects joined the dance. A humble oil lamp with measured notches became a working-class timer, its wick's descent marking a mother's watch over a feverish child or a baker's rise before dawn. Now shift your gaze from grand cosmic clocks to the quiet artifacts of daily life. Because while empires rose and fell by celestial time, ordinary people marked their days with more intimate tools. A worn spindle whorl spinning thread by the fire, a cooking pot's residue revealing meal rhythms, or a child's growth notched into a doorframe. These unassuming objects hold secrets just as profound. How humans carved meaning from moments long before minutes were invented. A Roman oil lamp tells a story in layers, not just of wax and wick, but of sleepless nights. The soot buildup inside its nozzle reveals how many hours it burned, whether illuminating a scholar's scroll or a mother's weary face as she rocked a child. Nearby, a Viking spindle whorl, its weight perfectly calibrated for spinning wool into yarn, speaks of winters warmed by hands that turned raw fleece into clothing. These weren't just objects, they were silent partners in survival, bearing the grooves of daily labor long after their owners vanished. Cooking pots are even more revealing. That blackened crust on a Bronze Age vessel, chemical analysis can identify whether it once simmered millet, fish, or honeyed wine, each meal leaving molecular traces like a culinary fingerprint. Some pots show repair marks where cracks were drilled and stitched with wire, proving even broken things were cherished when resources were scarce. And then there's the trash. Ancient middens, those piles of discarded shells, bones, and broken pottery, are like time capsules of taste. Oyster shells in a Saxon rubbish pit map forgotten coastlines, while olive pits in a Roman drain confirm trade routes that brought Mediterranean flavors to Northern Europe. Children's lives echo in the smallest finds. A wooden top abandoned near a Viking longhouse, its spin long stilled, or a rag doll from Egypt missing an arm. These weren't just playthings but witnesses to childhoods both universal and unique. In Pompeii, a child scribbled graffiti on a wall. "Marcus was here," feels startlingly modern, while tiny footprints in a Neolithic village drying clay floors prove kids have always dashed where they shouldn't. Even waste tells triumphant stories. A shattered amphora repurposed as a planter, or a bronze scraper melted down and reborn as a brooch. These transformations show ingenuity in the face of scarcity. Now shift your gaze from homes to harbors, where scales, weights, and merchant seals reveal how ordinary objects fueled empires. Because the real magic of trade tools lies not in their grandeur, but in their ability to turn a handful of grain into a language of trust across continents. The stone weights found in Mesopotamian markets weren't just tools, they were the foundation of trust between strangers, carved with precise cuneiform inscriptions declaring their authority. These standardized measures turned suspicion into commerce. One particularly worn weight discovered in Ur still bears the finger marks of countless merchants who placed it on their scales, each groove a testament to deals struck over wool, grain, or lapis lazuli. But the real revelation came when archaeologists matched these weights to surviving clay tablets like that Babylonian record detailing beer rations for workers, complete with the scribe's fingernail impression sealing the transaction. These weren't mere lists, they were contracts binding society together. Counterfeit coins tell an equally compelling story. The minute filing marks on a Roman denarius, meant to shave off precious metal undetected, prove that fraud is as old as money itself. Yet the response was ingenious. Greek mints began adding intricate designs and edge lettering to their silver drachmas, creating the ancient equivalent of holograms. Even more fascinating are the coin-die steel punches used to stamp currency found from China to Carthage. The wear patterns on their surfaces reveal how frequently empires needed to refresh their money supply, often after wars drained their treasuries. A single die could strike thousands of coins before cracking, each one carrying the ruler's face to the farthest corners of their domain. Seals transformed personal identity into portable security. A merchant's cylinder seal rolled across wet clay created a signature impossible to forge, its unique pattern linking goods to their owner across vast trade networks. In Indus Valley cities, archaeologists found seal impressions depicting unicorn-like creatures, still undeciphered symbols that may have represented powerful clans or trading houses. The Phoenicians took this further, embedding seals into glass amulets worn around the neck, turning jewelry into a business tool. But commerce moved more than goods, it smuggled ideas in its cargo holds. A shipwreck off Turkey yielded bronze scales with weights calibrated to Egyptian standards alongside Greek pottery, proving that measurement systems traveled with merchants. The same Babylonian math used to calculate interest rates later helped Greek astronomers track planets. Even humble commodities sparked revolutions. Chinese silk reaching Rome created a fashion frenzy so intense the Senate tried banning it, while Arabian coffee beans introduced new social rituals to European cities. Now shift your gaze from marketplaces to temples, because while weights and coins measured earthly value, ritual objects measured something far more profound: humanity's relationship with the divine. A priest's bronze cup from Mycenae still smells of burnt offerings after 3,000 years, its residue revealing sacrifices of barley, wine, and olive oil. These weren't just ceremonies, they were cosmic transactions sealed with smoke and prayer. The clay offering bowl found in a Sumerian temple wasn't just a container, it was a bridge between earthly hands and divine ears. Its worn rim bears the fingerprints of countless worshippers who poured libations of oil or grain, each gift carrying whispered prayers for rain, health, or forgiveness. Across cultures, these ritual objects share an uncanny similarity. A Shang dynasty bronze vessel for ancestral offerings mirrors the shape of Greek file bowls, both designed to hold liquids that would evaporate skyward like rising prayers. Even the humblest artifacts radiate spiritual urgency. Those cracked oracle bones from ancient China, scorched and inscribed with questions for the gods, show how people sought answers in the very cracks of fate itself. Some rituals shock modern sensibilities but made profound sense in their time. The Maya bloodletting knife carved from stingray spine wasn't about pain, it was about transformation. When a queen drew her own blood onto bark paper and burned it, the rising smoke symbolized wisdom ascending to the gods. Temple incense burners tell parallel stories. A copal-filled censer from Teotihuacan still releases traces of its pine resin sent after 15 centuries, while the charred remains of frankincense in Roman temples reveal trade routes stretching to Arabia's distant deserts. These weren't just pleasant smells, they were cosmic currencies, payments for divine attention. Votive offerings expose raw human vulnerability. A tiny terracotta womb left in an Etruscan healing sanctuary, or a bronze leg hung in a Greek temple, carried desperate hopes for bodily wholeness. In Peru, priests bundled sacred objects into mysterious mummy parcel shells representing the sea, seeds for abundance, gold for the sun's eternity. Even the tools of sacrifice carried layered meanings. The Egyptian Peshesh Kef knife used in funeral rites wasn't merely ceremonial. Its flint blade echoed prehistoric tools, connecting death rituals to humanity's deepest past. What unites these objects is their testimony to universal longings for connection, for protection, for meaning beyond the visible world. Now turn your gaze to the artifacts that accompanied the final journey, for burial goods hold some of history's most intimate conversations between the living and the dead. A child's toy placed in a grave, a warrior's sword carefully bent to release its spirit. These choices whisper across millennia about love, loss, and what we believe waits beyond. A child's tiny leather sandal placed in an Egyptian tomb, worn at the heel from little feet that would never grow, holds more power than any golden treasure. These weren't just objects buried with the dead, they were love letters to eternity, packed with hopes that transcended time. When a Viking chieftain was laid to rest with his ship, his folded sails and oars weren't merely practical, they were promises of journeys to come in realms unseen. The same hands that carved a wooden doll for a living child might later tuck it into their grave, a tangible whisper of "you are not forgotten." Some cultures took this further, performing rituals to free the spirits of objects. Celtic warriors bent swords before burial, not as destruction but as liberation, releasing the weapon's soul to serve its master beyond the veil. In ancient China, delicate paper replicas of houses and servants were burned, their smoke carrying their essence to the afterlife. Even food played its part. A basket of barley bread found in a Neolithic grave wasn't just sustenance. Its charred crust suggests a final meal shared symbolically between mourners and the departed. What's striking is how these practices crossed continents independently. From Peru's mummy bundles wrapped in intricate textiles to Japan's Haniwa clay guardians encircling tombs, the instinct to equip loved ones for the unknown seems universal. A Roman glass vial still holding traces of perfume speaks of last anointings, while an Anglo-Saxon burial with a lyre suggests music was considered as vital in death as in life. Now consider the paradox. These objects meant for eternity often tell us most about the living. The wear on a queen's favorite mirror buried with her shows how often she gazed at her reflection. A farmer's calloused hands left oils on his sickle's handle, preserved in the anaerobic embrace of peat. Every choice, from a pharaoh's golden mask to a slave's simple bead, reveals unspoken hierarchies, intimate relationships, and shared fears about what lies beyond. As we turn from tombs to thresholds, another set of objects emerges, ones meant not to accompany journeys but to control them. Ancient locks and keys weren't just functional, they were symbols of power and privacy in worlds where both were fragile. A bronze Roman key shaped like a hand didn't just open doors, its gesture said, "This far and no further," while medieval guilds guarded their chests with mechanisms so intricate they bordered on sacred art. The shift from burial goods to security devices marks humanity's next great preoccupation, not preparing for the afterlife but protecting the present one. The wooden lock found in an Egyptian palace doorway wasn't just a barrier. It was a revolution in trust, carved with pegs that only dropped into place with the correct key. This 4,000-year-old security device reveals how early civilizations grappled with a universal human dilemma: how to create private spaces in a communal world. What's astonishing isn't just its mechanical ingenuity, the way tumblers align to release the bolt, but what it tells us about changing social norms. For the first time, people could secure possessions without constant vigilance, enabling new levels of personal property and privacy. Roman keys took this further, transforming practical tools into status symbols. A bronze keyring from Pompeii held not just house keys but miniature charms, a tiny fish for good luck, a phallus for prosperity. The wealthiest Romans wore intricate key rings as jewelry, their serpentine designs signaling they had valuables worth protecting. Some keys never opened physical doors at all. Early Christian keys of heaven pendants referenced St. Peter's metaphorical authority, blending spiritual and earthly security in a single symbol. Seals added another layer of protection and personality. A Mesopotamian merchant rolling his cylinder seal across a clay tablet wasn't just preventing tampering, he was embedding his identity into the very surface. Those fingerprints pressed into the edges, they're more than accident. They were ancient biometrics, unique identifiers verifying authenticity. In China, seal stamps carved from jade became so personally significant that destroying someone's seal was considered a fate worse than death. The psychology behind these devices fascinates as much as their mechanics. A Viking padlock found in York used rotating rings with runic inscriptions. Only someone who could spell the word peace could open it, making literacy itself a security feature. Byzantine merchants employed trick locks with hidden levers, while medieval guilds crafted chests with false keyholes to frustrate thieves. These weren't just barriers, they were puzzles testing wits as much as wills. Now consider how these innovations in security paved the way for another revolution: the tools that moved people and goods across continents. Because the same hands that carved lock mechanisms would soon shape the axles, sails, and harnesses that connected distant worlds. From the wooden pegs securing doors to the iron nails holding ships together, the journey from standing still to moving forward was about to accelerate. The first chariot fittings discovered in Mesopotamian ruins weren't just metal rings, they were the birth certificates of speed. Those delicate bronze rein guides, polished smooth by leather straps pulling against them, testify to humanity's restless urge to move faster than nature allowed. What's astonishing isn't just their craftsmanship, but how quickly chariot technology spread. Within centuries of their invention, Egyptian chariots boasted flexible wooden wheels with rawhide tires, while Hittite designs added iron axle caps for battlefield durability. Each modification tells a story. The lighter the chariot, the swifter the messenger, the sturdier the frame, the deadlier the charge. Even the spacing between wheel ruts in ancient Anatolian roads reveals standardized axle widths, proof of an early transportation network as regulated as modern highways. Horse bits offer even more intimate insights. A simple bronze mouthpiece from the Mongolian steppes, its edges worn smooth by generations of equine teeth, speaks of nomadic cultures who lived in perpetual motion. Compare that to the ornate silver bits found in Celtic chieftains' graves, their cheek pieces shaped like roaring beasts. These weren't just tools but status symbols, declaring mastery over both animals and men. The differences in design map entire philosophies of horsemanship. The loose ring bits favored by Scythian archers allowed delicate control during mounted combat, while Roman cavalry used harsher curb bits to assert absolute command. But wheels weren't the only answer to rough terrain. In the frozen north, Viking sled fragments with curved birch runners glide across snow as efficiently today as they did 1,000 years ago. The dogs that pulled them left their own traces, not in artifacts but in DNA, with modern Siberian huskies carrying genetic markers from their ancient working ancestors. Meanwhile, Arabian camel saddles evolved into high-backed masterpieces of ergonomics, distributing weight so perfectly that caravans could cross deserts bearing loads that would crush horses. Each adaptation, whether to ice, sand, or mountain trails, proves that transportation wasn't just about moving from place to place, but about reshaping geography itself. The real revolution came when these innovations collided with commerce. A single Phoenician shipwreck off the coast of Turkey carried ingots from Cyprus, pottery from Greece, and ivory from Africa, all because wheels, sails, and hooves had woven once isolated cultures into a single economic web. The Silk Road wasn't paved with silk, but with countless worn horseshoes and camel hoofprints. Now, shift your gaze from the tools that moved bodies to those that stirred souls. Because the same hands that carved sled runners would soon shape brushes and chisels, turning raw materials into something far more elusive beauty. The ochre-stained grinding stone found in a South African cave still carries traces of red pigment ground to powder 100,000 years ago, not for survival, but for something far more profound, the human need to create beauty. These early artists didn't just crush minerals, they transformed earth into emotion, using their fingers as brushes to leave handprints that shout, "I was here," across millennia. Fast forward to Renaissance workshops, where apprentices mixed pigments on walnut shells, their cracked surfaces revealing layers of trial and error. Each failed hue a stepping stone toward mastery. The tools of art were never passive. They were collaborators in humanity's most enduring conversations. Take Maya blue, that radiant pigment found on murals and pottery across ancient Mesoamerica. Its secret ingredient wasn't just mineral, it was spiritual. Chemists now know the color came from binding indigo to sacred palagorskite clay, then heating it in rituals that infused the dye with cosmic significance. When Spanish conquistadors burned Maya codices, they missed the real story. The surviving blue fragments whispered of a people who saw color as a bridge between worlds. Even the humblest tools carried this weight. A squirrel hair brush buried in a Tang dynasty tomb wasn't merely a painter's tool. Its delicate strokes captured poetry in ink, turning bamboo stalks into philosophical statements. Sculpting chisels tell equally layered tales. The bronze tools found near Michelangelo's unfinished slaves still bear marks from his furious strikes, each chip in the marble echoing his famous claim to release the figure trapped in the stone. Contrast that with the flint berens used by Ice Age artisans to carve antler figurines. Microscopic analysis shows these tools were resharpened hundreds of times, their users persisting despite material scarcity. The cracks in an apprentice's clay palette from ancient Athens reveal another truth. Art was taught through repetition. Finger grooves in the drying clay match those on masterpieces, proving technique was passed hand to hand long before it was written down. Fresco brushes uncovered in Pompeii's ruins hold their own surprises. Their bristles, made from hog hair or fern stems, left distinctive strokes that let conservators identify individual artist styles, some bold and sweeping, others painstakingly detailed. The same walls show where brushes slipped, were corrected, or were abandoned altogether, capturing creative struggles frozen in volcanic ash. Even the containers mattered. Mussel shells used as paint pots in medieval manuscripts still bear traces of lapis lazuli, their ultramarine pigment more expensive than gold because it crossed deserts from Afghan mines to European monasteries. What unites these tools across time is their power to encode belief. A Navajo sand painting's feather brush wasn't just applying colors, it was summoning healing spirits according to sacred geometries. The bamboo pens of Islamic calligraphers turned ink into divine language, their precise cuts shaping letters believed to carry Allah's words. Every stroke, whether on cave walls or cathedral ceilings, was a decision about what deserved to endure. Now, witness how humanity's quest to shape beauty would soon merge with another revolution, the alchemy of metal. Because the same hands that ground pigments would soon smelt ores, discovering that Earth's hidden veins could be forged into something both functional and glorious. The journey from ochre to iron wasn't just about new materials, it was about reimagining what human creativity could conquer. Crucibles tell a silent story of transformation, not just of ore into metal, but of entire societies. Those simple clay cups, scorched black from countless firings, were the alchemical wombs where civilizations took their next great leap. In Anatolia, archaeologists found crucibles still flecked with copper residue from 7,000 years ago, their interiors lined with crushed bone ash, an early flux to purify molten metal. But what's truly revolutionary is how these unassuming tools redistributed power. The smith who mastered crucibles didn't just craft ornaments, they unlocked the secret of turning rock into wealth, a magic more potent than any spell. Homer's epics come alive when we examine a blacksmith's hammer unearthed from Mycenaean ruins. Its worn face matches descriptions in the Iliad of Hephaestus forging Achilles' armor, while the soot-stained anvil nearby bears grooves from shaping bronze into everything from plowshares to spearheads. This wasn't just craftsmanship, it was alchemy disguised as labor. The real breakthrough came with alloys. Corinthian bronze, prized across the Mediterranean, wasn't just copper and tin. Ancient texts hint at traces of gold and silver, while modern spectroscopy reveals something startling. Some batches contained meteoritic iron, giving the metal an otherworldly shimmer. These weren't accidental recipes, they were guarded industrial secrets, passed down through guilds as carefully as royal bloodlines. Metal's impact stretched far beyond battlefields. In Mesopotamia, standardized bronze weights shaped commerce, their heft guaranteeing the value of shekels in grain or wool. A mold for casting sickles found in China's Yellow River Valley shows how iron democratized farming. Once a luxury for elites, metal tools now let ordinary farmers clear land faster, fueling population booms. The real surprise lies in the waste. Slag piles from Roman mines contain traces of silver extraction so efficient they rival modern methods, while Viking forge sites reveal how broken weapons were melted down and reborn as fishing hooks or cooking pots. Now consider the unsung hero of metallurgy, the bellows. A reconstructed Egyptian foot-operated leather bellow can reach temperatures high enough to smelt iron, no mean feat without modern blowers. But it's the social implications that astonish. When African Bantu tribes developed high-heat furnaces, they didn't just produce better hoes, they triggered migrations as metal-equipped farmers outcompeted stone tool cultures. Everywhere metal spread, it rewrote the rules not through conquest, but through the quiet accumulation of better tools, stronger plows, and sharper ideas. The most fascinating finds aren't treasures, but trash. A cache of broken bronze mirrors in a Carthaginian workshop shows how artisans collected scrap for recasting, while Roman shipwrecks carried cargoes of recycled nails and hinges. This wasn't mere frugality, it was an early circular economy where metal never died, only changed form. From the broken sword reforged as a child's rattle to the temple statue melted down during famine, recycling reveals societies constantly renegotiating value. When we analyze the lead isotopes in a Saxon brooch and match them to Roman pipes looted from abandoned villas, we're witnessing history's most enduring alchemy, the endless reinvention of the past into the future. Broken pottery wasn't trash to ancient civilizations. It was opportunity waiting to happen. Walk the streets of ancient Rome, and beneath your sandals you'd hear the crunch of terracotta shards mixed into gravel, a clever solution to reinforce muddy roads. In Egypt, shattered amphorae found new life as makeshift scoops or writing surfaces, their curved fragments perfect for scratching practice letters. But the real genius lies in what we don't see: the countless melted-down bronze statues recycled into weapons during wars, or the delicate gold filigree from a discarded necklace reforged into a merchant's ring. This wasn't just frugality, it was a philosophy where nothing truly ended, only transformed. Take that Viking sword discovered in a Danish bog, its blade deliberately bent before being tossed into the waters. For centuries, scholars assumed this was a ritual sacrifice until metallurgists noticed something astonishing. Many sacrificed weapons showed signs of having been broken and repaired multiple times before their final retirement. These weren't just offerings to the gods, they were veterans put out to pasture after lifetimes of service. Even in death, they held value, their iron slowly rusting back into the earth to nourish new growth. Clothing tells a parallel story of ingenuity. A child's tunic from Coptic Egypt, patched with fabric from 3 different garments, whispers of hands carefully stitching to extend its use. In Mongolia, felt from worn-out yurts became insulation for winter boots, while Norse sailors unraveled old sweaters to reuse the wool for fishing nets. The Japanese art of sashiko, decorative stitching that reinforced fabric, turned rags into heirlooms, each mend adding to the story. Perhaps most touching are the graves where tools outlived their owners. A well-worn sickle placed in a Neolithic farmer's burial wasn't just sentimental, it was practical. The polished handle showed decades of use, the flint blade replaced multiple times. This wasn't wealth buried uselessly, it was knowledge passed down, a family's livelihood honored even in eternity. Now shift your gaze from objects to hands. Because the same societies that recycled materials also divided labor in ways that might surprise us. The calluses on a woman's skeleton buried with a blacksmith's hammer tell one story, while the arthritis in a man's fingers from years of weaving baskets tells another. Tools rarely cared about gender, only about the skill to wield them. A spindle whorl buried with a woman in ancient Greece seems to confirm everything we think we know about gendered labor until you examine her bones. The arthritis in her shoulders matches that of seasoned warriors, not just weavers. Across the Baltic, a Viking grave cradles a sword alongside delicate pearl earrings, its occupant's DNA revealing a genetic signature typically female. These contradictions aren't outliers, they're reminders that tools often refuse to fit neatly into our modern boxes. Take the case of a Minoan fresco from Crete showing women wielding double axes in ritual ceremonies, or the discovery of female potters' fingerprints on ceremonial vessels in Mesopotamia, their skilled hands shaping objects meant for temples, not just hearths. Climate, however, played no favorites when it came to necessity. In the frozen Arctic, Inuit women's ulu knives were as vital as men's harpoons, their crescent blades expertly processing sealskins for clothing that meant survival. Meanwhile, in the Nile's floodplains, murals depict men and women side by side during harvests, their sickles identical in form and function. The Sahara tells a different story. Tuareg swordsmithing was strictly male, yet the same culture celebrated women as the sole transmitters of written language through delicate engraving tools. What emerges isn't a simple division of labor, but a tapestry of adaptation. A queen's hunting spear buried in the Kazakh steppes speaks less of rebellion than of practicality. Nomadic life demanded versatility. Contrast that with the delicate bone needles found in a scribe's tomb in Egypt, his calloused fingers suggesting he stitched scroll bindings as meticulously as he penned hieroglyphs. Tools, it seems, were more democratic than we assume. Now consider how environment dictated design. The same hands that shaped clay in Mesopotamia's river valleys would have struggled with the dense hardwoods of Germania, where axes required radically different heft and balance. When resources were scarce, roles blurred. When survival demanded specialization, they hardened. A Bronze Age woman's grave in Sweden contains both weaving tools and a smithing hammer, her society likely valuing skill over gender in a land where every able hand mattered. The real revelation lies in the wear patterns, not just on tools but on bones. A woman's skeleton from ancient Catalonia shows the same shoulder deformities as a blacksmith's, while a man's remains in Japan reveal knees worn smooth from years kneeling at a loom. These weren't exceptions to the rule, they were the rule in contexts where climate and culture intersected. From the desert to the tundra, necessity wrote the script, and tools were its most honest narrators. The Inuit snow goggles carved from driftwood weren't just eye protection, they were survival crystallized into form. Their narrow slits, darkened with soot to reduce glare, transformed blinding white landscapes into navigable terrain, proving that innovation often springs from sheer necessity. Half a world away, the Tuareg of the Sahara crafted water skins from goat bladders, lined with beeswax to slow evaporation. These weren't mere containers, they were portable lifelines, their design refined over generations to squeeze every drop from a hostile environment. Even the humble thatching needle, used to weave palm fronds into storm-proof roofs across the tropics, tells a story of humans bending nature to their will without breaking its back. Drought-resistant plows from ancient Mesopotamia reveal another layer of adaptation. Their curved wooden blades, designed to turn parched soil with minimal moisture, allowed farmers to coax life from earth that would otherwise have been barren. Compare these to the raised granaries of the Khmer Empire, their bamboo stilts lifting precious rice stores above monsoon floods. These structures weren't just storage, they were climate forecasts rendered in wood and thatch, their very architecture anticipating nature's next move. The Moch people took it further, etching irrigation canals into Peruvian deserts so precisely that modern satellite imagery still traces their ghostly outlines beneath the sand. What unites these tools is their refusal to see the environment as an adversary. Instead, they speak of observation refined into intimacy. The Inuit understanding snow's reflective properties as deeply as the Bedouin knew the weight of water in dry air. A Viking longhouse's turf insulation wasn't just practical, it was a conversation with the cold, borrowing the Earth's own warmth to offset Arctic winters. Similarly, the wind-catching towers of Persian bazaars transformed scorching gusts into natural air conditioning centuries before the concept had a name. Perhaps most remarkable is how these adaptations traveled. The same principle behind Inuit snow goggles appeared independently in the Himalayas, where yak wool masks with narrow eye slots protected against mountain glare. Roman hypocaust heating systems mirrored Korean ondol floor heating, both harnessing fire's waste heat with eerie similarity. These parallel innovations suggest that necessity doesn't just breed invention, it whispers the same solutions across continents to those who listen closely. Now consider the ultimate test of resilience, tools designed not just to endure but to remember. The Aboriginal Australians' songlines, mental maps encoded in melodies, turned navigation into oral tradition, ensuring survival knowledge outlived any single tool. In the Andes, Quipu knot records tracked crop cycles and weather patterns, their colored strings a tactile database of environmental wisdom. These weren't just tools against the elements, they were dialogues with time itself, ensuring hard-won lessons would echo far beyond their makers' lifespans. What emerges isn't a history of conquest, but of collaboration between human minds and the materials they shaped. between generations who passed down knowledge like the most precious heirloom. From the snow goggles that tamed light to the granaries that defied floods, these objects whisper the same truth. Resilience isn't about dominating nature, but dancing with its rhythms, one ingenious adaptation at a time. From a flint scraper to a scribe's pen, everyday objects are more than relics, they're time machines hiding in plain sight. That stone knife with its edge worn smooth from preparing countless meals doesn't just represent survival. It carries the rhythm of hands that pause to sharpen it between tasks, the laughter shared over food it helped prepare, the quiet moments when its user gazed at the horizon and wondered about tomorrow. These objects bypass the grand narratives of kings and conquests to show us the heartbeat of history, the calloused fingers, the tired backs, the ingenious solutions born from necessity. Take something as ordinary as a broken quern stone, its surface grooved from years of grinding grain. The angle of those grooves tells us whether the person using it was left-handed or right. The depth reveals how often meals were prepared in that household. The fragments found scattered near a hearth might hint at a moment of frustration, or perhaps a child's accident met with patience. These aren't just artifacts, they're intimate conversations with people separated from us by centuries, but united by the same daily struggles and small triumphs. Consider the emotional weight carried by a single artifact like the Roman oil lamp discovered in Pompeii, still bearing the imprint of a thumb pressed into its wet clay before firing. That accidental fingerprint outlasted empires, or the Viking spindle whorl found in a grave, its weight perfectly calibrated for spinning wool into yarn, buried with a woman whose name we'll never know but whose skill clothed her family through long winters. Even the humblest objects, a child's clay toy, a mended cooking pot, a fisherman's net needle, are monuments to resilience. They remind us that civilization wasn't built on battlefields, but in countless unrecorded moments of creativity and care. What's extraordinary is how these objects bridge cultures. A Japanese Jomon pottery shard and a Mesopotamian cuneiform tablet might seem worlds apart, but both carry the same human impulse: to create, to communicate, to leave a mark. A Bronze Age chisel from China and an Egyptian adze share more than function. They embody the universal pride of craftsmanship. The needle that stitched Viking sails is a sibling to the bone awls that sewed Inuit sealskin boots. These connections reveal a truth grand histories often overlook. Innovation is rarely isolated. It's a chorus of countless voices whispering solutions across time and space. Now it's your turn to join that conversation. Imagine holding an ancient tool, perhaps a scribe's stylus still stained with ink, or a farmer's sickle polished smooth by harvests long forgotten. What stories would it tell you? Share in the comments which artifact speaks to you most. Is it the delicate scales of a Mesopotamian merchant, the vibrant dyes of a Paracas textile, or something else entirely? Don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into the hidden lives behind history's everyday objects, because when we listen closely, even the smallest artifact can echo with the voices of those who shaped our